Chris, and this is going to be my Bran's vision breakdown from Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 6, Blood of My Blood. This will be a separate video focusing only on Bran's visions and what they could mean, but I want to give you my take on what I believe these visions may mean to Bran and why he downloaded this particular set of visions from the Matrix. Alright, so basically Bran had 3 sets of visions here, and they came between shots of the whites chasing Mira and Bran through the woods. She's still dragging him on his sled. Hodor obviously couldn't hold the door that damn long, and they were a lot of repetitive stuff, but I think it kind of had an overall theme. But I do want to go through some of these that do repeat and kind of give you my idea of why they're there in the first place. So in this first set of visions, we had the Night's King, then we had pyromancers making wildfire. This looks to be in the old days during the Mad King's reign. We had Drogon flying over King's Landing, and if you didn't know, this was actually from the teaser from Season 4 when Drogon's shadow was seen over King's Landing. And then we go back to the Mad King, Aerys II, this being Dany's father, and then of course we go back to the Night's King. We then see Bran falling as he got pushed out the window by Jaime. We see dawn, as in the sunrise, not the sword, which I think is likely the end of the long night. Then we go and see Cat dying at the Red Wedding. Again, we see Drogon flying over King's Landing. We see Dany after she birthed her dragons in the fire. And then we see the Night's King and the baby turning into a White Walker. And then these visions start to repeat. We see the Pyromancers again, the dragon again over King's Landing, the Mad King, and then the Night's King. And then we see one more set of repeating visions with Cat dying at the Red Wedding, the dragon over King's Landing, Dany birthing her dragons, and then the Night's King turning Craster's baby into a White Walker. And then it ends with Ned getting his head chopped off. And then in the next set of visions, we see the dawn again. We see another repeat set of visions after that with Drogon flying over the city, Dany hatching her dragons, the Night King turning the baby into a White Walker, which was Craster's son. And then we see a vision of ravens, and this is from probably Season 4 when Sam and Gilly were running from the White Walker when he actually killed the White Walker. We see the roots of the weirwood tree. We see the pyromancers again, the Mad King screaming burn them all. Then we see wildfire burning in King's Landing, and remember this hasn't happened yet, and this is also what Jaime saved from happening when he killed Aerys during the sack of King's Landing. Then we see Jaime approaching Aerys II, the Mad King, on the Iron Throne as he walks towards him. And then we had 2 standout scenes here, and this is young Ned at the Tower of Joy asking where's my sister, and then immediately after we see a bloody hand, and I looked a few times, this is definitely a female hand, so this is more than likely Lyanna's hand at the Tower of Joy in her bed of blood. And then we go back and see Jaime stabbing the Mad King. We see the Red Wedding as Robb dies. We see a raven as in the Three-Eyed Raven. We see Robb falling at the Red Wedding. We see the White Walker creation when Leaf shoves the dragonglass into his heart. We see Jon fighting the White Walker at Hardhome, probably letting Bran know about Valyrian steel here. And then we see Jaime sitting on the Iron Throne, and this would have been right before Ned walks in. He thinks he's making a power play, but in reality Ned didn't know the whole story, and Jaime actually saved the entire city from the Mad King screaming burn them all, and that's why Ned and Jaime never had a good relationship. And then we see more wildfire burning in the crypts below King's Landing, likely where it's stored. And then another repeat set of Drogon over King's Landing, Dany again hatching her dragons, the Night King again, the shadow of Jaime killing the Mad King. Then we see more ravens flying towards the camera. Again, a shout out possibly to Cold Hands because ravens did follow him around in the books. Then we see Leaf. Then we see Jaime again. And then we see wildfire kind of burning down the hallway as it kind of advances towards the camera. And then finally we have a third set of visions, and these seem to all be related to the creation of the White Walker army. And this is what Bran is learning here, I think. We have the White Walkers creating the Whites at Hardhome as the Night King raises his arms. We see the Hardhome attack by the Whites. Then he sees his own last vision in the Lands of Always Winter where he saw the army of the dead and he was touched by the Night King. And then Bran wakes up. So what the hell is going on here? Why show us all this shit, and why is Bran downloading this particular information from the Matrix? So basically what I think is going on here is we see these themes throughout these visions that are repeated several times, and these are themes of ice and of fire. As far as the ice theme goes, we see the Night's King, we see the creation of the White Walkers, we see Bran learning that White Walkers are created from human babies as well as far as Craster's sons. Bran had never known this information. All he had saw was the original origin story of the original Night King. He's seen the creation of the zombie army as far as the Whites go and how they're raised from the dead at Hardhome. And then as far as the fire theme of these visions, we see pyromancers, we see the Mad King screaming burn them all, we see the dragons being born, we see the dragon flying over King's Landing. Bran is not aware of any of this shit going on as far as Dany. He's not aware that Dany exists, that dragons exist. Osha tried to tell Bran back in Season 2 that the Red Comet only meant one thing, and that was dragons, but he wasn't trying to hear her back then.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So you had these two themes of ice and fire. You had his parents dying, you had himself falling out of the window and how he got there in the first place. And you also had dawn as far as the sunrise, and I believe this is probably the end to the long night. So what the hell does all that mean? Well, I think it basically means that Bran is getting all the information here as far as putting together the pieces of the puzzle. He needs to know here that other than dragonglass, there are other things that can stop the White Walkers, and that would be wildfire, and more specifically dragons and dragonfire. So he's seeing all these Targaryen fire type things throughout these visions, and he's also seeing the key players players as far as who can help him get this done. We see the reference to the Tower of Joy and Lyanna, and that's obviously a reference to Jon Snow. He's also seeing Dany here for the first time. He has never had any idea that Dany existed. So to me, what he's getting here is all the information he needs to get in contact with the right people as far as Jon and Dany. So I think that since Bran has no magical ability to control anything in the present as far as, you know, shooting fireballs out his ass, that he will in fact have to contact Jon in some way and get Dany involved. So I think his primary role from this point forward is to put together all this information, and I think he's going to be the one to end up getting Dany into the fold. Once she comes over, she's going to be seen as a conqueror for a little while, but once she realizes what's going on with the real threat coming, she's going to have to be talked into or shown at least what's really going on. So I think Bran may play a key role in getting Dany involved in the story finally, once she finally gets back to Westeros and stops focusing so much on that damn Iron Chair. Now, before I wrap this up, you may be saying, what about the Mad King? Well, that's right. Why did we see the Mad King? We've already heard this story from Jaime. He told Brienne the real reason he killed the Mad King, something he had never told Ned Stark. He could have just focused on Valyrian steel and dragonglass and dragon fire. I definitely think this lends credence to the theory that has been blowing up the internet the last couple weeks about somebody affected the Mad King in the past, making Aerys crazy, and I don't think that was Bran. I think that was Bloodraven. I think Bloodraven, being a Targaryen and always being loyal to the realm, even when he was sent to the Wall by Aegon V, and then he disappeared beyond the Wall and became the Three-Eyed Crow, I think he realized, you know what, I'll go back in the past and tell the king, at the time Aerys II. I think he did go back in the past and try to warn the Mad King about the coming White Walker threat, and that's where you hear burn them all. And over time, he fucking drove him crazy, because at least in the books, Aerys didn't go crazy overnight, and of course during the sack of King's Landing during Robert's Rebellion, he was screaming burn them all once Tywin started to sack the city, and Jaime of course saved everybody by killing him and the pyromancers. I think this is why we see the Mad King flashback here, to connect the dots for Bran that if you go and try to fuck with the past, there's going to be consequences, and that of course also led to the end of the Targaryen dynasty. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that the Mad King went crazy because Bloodraven actually tried to help warn him of the White Walkers. He possibly heard something about burn them all, use wildfire, whatever it takes, because that's what it's going to take to defeat these assholes, and that's why Bloodraven is probably so adamant that Bran doesn't try to fuck with the past, because he does say,
"The past is already written. The ink is dry."
And now Bran's kind of seeing that. He's got to realize that he has all the tools and all the people to use those tools, and he just has to get them in the right place at the right time. He's just got to decipher the code. So anyway, that's what I think about the visions. I just don't see any other reason here to show the Mad King and Jaime killing the Mad King and the wildfire and all that good stuff for any other reason. Anyway, guys, I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps a little bit with those visions. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, I will be doing the full episode breakdown as well, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, you can click here on the last video I did with James from Daily Use of Sports Trivia, and that was the last Q&A we did, as well as the discussion about episode 6. And as soon as I get the episode 6 breakdown done, I'll put a link to that in the description below, so you can check that out as well as an annotation at the end of this video. So again, thanks for all the support, you guys. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.